Hey, how's it going, guys? This is your boy Hazzed, and in today's video, we're going to be going over Frost DK on the PTR and doing a little video on how to duel on a Frost DK. I know a lot of you are curious about what stats I'm running, what abilities I'm running, and just kind of the overall strategy of just what's going on with Frost DK right now. Now, there are a few little tricks that you can definitely use that the majority of DKs we see definitely aren't using in their duels, and it's normally why they're coming up so short and they feel like healing is specifically extremely lacking. So let's go ahead and jump into this video and talk about it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be talking about with this beautiful two-handed obliteration build is we're going to be talking about what we should be using for talents. So as for the level 15 talents, we're going to be running a Noxiable Assault just for the maximum overall burst from Obliterate, because that is going to be our main source of damage. Roughly around 30% plus is going to be pure Obliterate damage popping off with our big two-handers. So definitely running a Noxiable Assault to increase the overall obliteration damage. Now as for the level 25 talent, we're going to be using Murderous Efficiency, because once you time that with Obliteration, it's actually extremely good runic gain, and it grants you quite a lot of burst pressure in terms of using a two-hander with Obliteration. Obviously, you're not going to have nearly as much auto attacks with a two-hander, so Runic Attune isn't going to generate you nearly as much runic power as it would dual wield. So obviously Murderous Efficiency with Obliteration is going to be the way to go with guaranteed killing machines. So as for the level 30 talents, we're going to be using Asphyxiate. Like, stuns are extremely powerful right now in PvP, especially 1v1 duels, since the majority of classes that aren't human don't have stun trinkets, so ends up being extremely effective. As for the level 35 talents, we're going to be using Avalanche for overall burst increase, because you will be attempting to weaving Howling Blast in and out of your Obliterates during Obliteration. That's kind of confusing tongue twister right there. But yeah, you're going to want to be weaving out those Howling Blasts in there, because they do quite a bit of damage, and they also cause Obliteration to proc killing machines on your Obliterate. As for the level 40 talents, you could be using Wraithwalk for a little bit more mobility, or you could be using Death Pact for more healing increase. I do prefer Death Pact, because there are going to be a lot of times that Death Pact's going to come in handy, like kind of baiting other classes to go full in on DPS, then you smack them with the Death Pact in the end, and it's quite surprising. Does turn out pretty well. As for the level 45 talents, if you want a little bit of extra burst, you can go Gathering Storms to deal quite a bit more pressure, but me personally, since my DK has a little bit less resilience than some of the other DKs I'm dueling out there, and the majority of classes, since I'm like, my PvE set's really strong but my PvP set's kind of mediocre at the moment, I take Hypothermic Presence, because you can actually generate an extra death coil during your healing capabilities if you're using Hypothermic Presence. Also, if the duel's lasting a long time, like you have a lot of kiting going on, a lot of survivability going on, you can, let's say, use your transfusion, we'll talk about that later, up front in the duel, and then use Hypothermic Pressure with a presence with, let's say, Lichborn a little bit later on, generally when somebody bursts, when you're going to like counter their burst. And then later when it comes back up, you can throw up Hypothermic Presence with, let's say, a transfusion again a little bit later on to generate even a little bit more Death Strike healing with this ability. So this is more of like a survivability. It does help quite a bit, and if you don't have nearly as much versatility, you are going to have to make up for that survivability and that healing by generally taking, let's say, a cooldown like this, which is fairly nice. You're not going to miss too much DPS, since we are playing a strength build, and the majority of our damage does come from Obliterate, which does pump quite a bit of runes into Gathering Storms, and generally deals around 5k damage or something in a duel, which is fairly good. Like in higher level tier duels, you're going to reach like 100k damage before somebody dies or loses. Lesser, 60, 50k along those lines. So it's not going to be a huge loss if you lose Gathering Storms. It is going to decrease your burst by a little bit. But yeah, as I'm saying, since I have a little bit less versatility than I should, I definitely go with Hypothermic Presence for the survivability, because surviving is a little bit harder as a DK that way. As for the low 50 talents, obviously we're going to be running Obliteration for those big old killing machine crits. We're going to be popping off with our two-hander. Now, obviously the reason why we're rocking two-hander is because, burst pressure Obliteration, but obviously they brought back, the good stuff, Might of the Frozen Waste here. That increases our Obliteration damage with the two-hander by 25%. So that's going to give us actually quite a bit of more burst pressure than you would with dual wield. Like, as we did testing the other day in comparison, two-hander obliteration build actually can almost double the damage, like overall damage done, compared to dual wield running an obliteration build. So fairly interesting to find out that. As for talents, that about sums up normal talents. As for dueling talents, dueling different classes, you're dueling like Arcane Mage. Heartstop Delirium is going to be like one of the only ways to go. Chill Streak is, I'd say it's kind of optional. Like if you wanted to play a heavier burst build and you've got like 30% versatility or better, you could definitely go Gathering Storm's Chill Streak for quite a bit of extra burst. Like 1,260 damage doesn't really sound like much, but even in overall single target abilities, it can hit for around 4,600 to 5k when you have everything fully procced. So that's quite a bit of damage coming out there. Things that are interchangeable, I've used Dead Winter a bit for like dueling warriors and more stationary targets like that, but overall it's kind of hit and miss sometimes because, you know, they start realizing you're using it. Now if you're like interchanging it out randomly and kind of like, you know, not hinting that you're switching anything out, you can definitely get away with using this and it'll catch them off guard. But overall it's definitely just too easy to see it's coming. As for on the PTR at the moment, Dome of Ancient Shadows is actually bugged. This would be something we'd be using a lot more often as a 60% damage reduction on magical effects. But since it's bugged out, we're definitely not resorting to that too often. Now, Necrotic Aura is actually, I mean, it's fairly good right now for two-hander, but obviously in the future, once we start hitting higher levels in, let's say, Shadowlands, the 8% magical damage increase is going to be fairly strong since our Obliterate on Killing Machine is actually going to be converted into frost damage. So that's going to be really good. The other thing about this build, guys, is even though this build is, let's say, in my tier list that we did the other day on a video talking about classes we were dueling, Frost DKs, I've listed as an A tier, and obviously not an S tier class, because they are pretty strong, but they are not 13k burst strong. Now, the thing we got to remember is Frost DKs are going to get 20% extra Obliterate. We're going to get a reduced cooldown on Empowered Rune Weapon, which is going to be pretty cool, I guess. Not really massive for our build, but, I mean, hey, why not? I'm not complaining. And as for the last one, the Killing Machine, your next Obliterate, also deals frost damage. So it's going to be really good when we start leveling up in Shadowlands. I would definitely say we are approaching like S tier level once we, you know, just get these talents alone. And then once we also get like the legendary that increases our Obliterate by like an extra 20% with the other like rune regen, it's going to be a heck of a lot stronger. We're going to get a lot more consistent pressure while also dealing more Obliterate damage and just kind of compounding all these sources on top of our Obliterates. Now, I have seen videos where people are hitting 9, 10k Obliterates with about 32k health pools. Now, imagine right now we're hitting for 25k, but our Obliterates are only hitting for about 3k, with the Nocturnal Bolt Assault included, about 4k. So when you do the math on the percentage of damage that we're going to be dealing based on the health pools in the future, our Obliterates hit quite a bit harder than they do now in comparison to the health pool and scaling. So I'm definitely looking forward to what's coming in the future. So I kind of just wanted to touch on that. So at level 50 during the pre-patch, it seems we are still going to have some kind of Azerite talents going on. We do not have corruptions. Those are completely turned off. As for stats, I'll go ahead and talk about stats real quick before we get into like Azerites and little, you know, things like that. As for the stat build, you're going to want to run Versatility Haste for this build, being that the majority of your pressure is going to come from your Obliterates, and a lot of your frost damage doesn't really do a lot of consistent pressure, which is what you're going to need to rely on to win the majority of these duels. Like, Chill Streak can absolutely hit like a boss, and it hits crazy hard. Now, if you're doing like arena settings or, you know, let's say you were dueling something with a pet that you could actually benefit off of a full-blown Chill Streak, you could most likely play a Mastery heavy build, and that would be pretty solid. But outside of that, when you're doing just like 1v1 and you're trying to generate overall damage running Obliteration, you're definitely going to want to go Haste at the moment. And that's going to be generating overall runic power, generating overall burst, generating overall consistency, and just kind of being a better class all around instead of just monstrous bursts at one point and then kind of falling off. Because a lot of classes right now have quite a bit of burst cooldowns and survivability. So let's go ahead and go over some of these Azerites. Now, I'm running Frozen Tempest, Frost Whelps, Latent Chill. Now, personally, what I would love to be running right now is, let's go ahead and open up, where is it at here? We got, oh yeah, Icy Citadel. I would love to be running triple Icy Citadel right now with this build, because obviously you're going to dump a ton of runes into your Obliterate, which is going to generate quite a bit more strength over time, you know, like encroaching on your next burst, or just kind of like that time after your burst where you just have that extra strength. It's going to deal a lot more consistent pressure with your Obliterates than obviously not having it. Now, in terms of Frostwhelp's Indignation, it does hit fairly hard, so I would probably stick with Frostwhelps and Icy Citadel on just about every one of those traits. I mean, I may switch it out a little bit later on, but overall, I would stick with that right now just because it does generate quite a bit more burst pressure. Like Frostwhelps can crit for around 4 to 5k, which obviously is very strong. You hit for, you know, 5k Frostwhelp, 5k Chill Streak, and 5k Dragon, you've done 15k damage with health pools around 25k. It's actually quite a bit of burst pressure, but it is fairly hard to, like, you know, kind of reach that, considering how low the crit we were running right now. As for the Azerite neck piece, I actually truly enjoy using Blood of the Enemy right now. It actually just hits extremely hard, like extremely powerful when used before your Obliteration burst, because literally just the majority of your abilities are going to be critting anyways. Like you're just going to get that extra crit damage and deal quite a bit of burst pressure. On the in the pre-patch. And as for Memory of Lucid Dreams, you're going to generate runes off it, which is going to give you a little bit more overall rotation. And of course, it's going to grant you a little bit of versatility, which is going to give you a little bit more healing, survivability, and damage, which is obviously great. Now, obviously, we're using Essence of the Focusing Iris because the extra haste. Obviously, we're haste build right now, versatility haste with this 2-handed obliteration build, really weighing heavy down on those big old smacks. And as for the last talent, we're running Breath of the Dying, obviously, because once you've got that thing to rank 3, it is just an absolutely insane DPS increase on procs. And of course, once you get a target near death, it becomes like steroid version of its original self and just starts going ham on things. So we've covered kind of what's going on with all that. Now, Burst Streak, it's pretty good for the spec, obviously, since you're controlling your burst, and it's not just like, you know, constantly proccing up burst trinkets. Burst trinkets work really well, and not only do they increase your overall damage and your burst pressure, but it's going to increase your survivability, which we will get into a little bit later when we start discussing some of the talents. As for weapons, you're kind of curious about, you know, what kind of enchant we want to put on a weapon. Obviously, I've got a haste verse weapon on. Getaku Cut of Death actually works extremely well, but since I have such low versatility, I went with Jewel Shark Splitter just to get a little bit of extra haste and verse. As for what rune we're going to be using, Rune of the Fallen Crusader. You want that strength proc, that 15% strength. Obviously, if you're running the correct Azerites and dealing damage for that extra strength proc and throwing up your cooldowns, you're going to get quite a bit of extra strength. That extra strength is going to deal a lot of obliteration damage, a lot of obliterate damage, and it's also going to give you a bit more survivability later on down the line, which becomes very important, which realistically is that key I'm talking about. A lot of people are trying out other things. You know, they're using Razor Ice, they're using different variations, and overall, relying on your obliterate damage seems to be a lot better than trying to go for frost damage at the moment. That kind of consistency, considering how well a lot of classes can survive. But you do obviously rely on it for your, like, major burst, but outside of that, no. I believe that counts it up for talents, kind of your Azerite neck piece. What do you got going for your weapon, your enchants, your gearing? Let's go ahead and get into some abilities and talk about how to actually burst on a two-handed Frost Decay. First thing we want to do is talk about burst with our little pillar down there. Alright, so bursting on a Frost Decay with obliteration is fairly simple, but a lot of people, what they don't realize about current Pillar of Frost is you do need to plan it out quite a bit better than you normally would when it comes to duels. And that has to do with Lichborn. Now, this is something that we definitely do need to kind of dunk into as our survivabilities we're talking about burst, because right now they actually kind of go hand in hand. And I feel like that's one of the major issues that a lot of Frost DKs at the moment really don't realize, and they're missing a lot of their self-survivability and their self-healing to counter a lot of the burst that the other classes are dishing out. I mean, we're talking about healing your entire health bar in terms of damage. So let's go ahead and I'll show you guys how to open up on this training dummy, and then yeah, we'll talk about this when it happens. Now, bursting on a Frost DK is fairly easy. You basically just throw up Pillar, you get your Howling Blast procs. Now, generally when you want to burst, is I like bursting just after generating a Howling Blast proc, like let's say if I'm withholding my burst, because I mean, as I said on the two-handed Frost Decay, you are going to plan it out a little bit better. Now if you're opening burst, you will do quite a bit of pressure off the opener, quite a bit of damage, but obviously you won't be maximizing that damage since you won't be generating procs and things along those lines. Now you're probably wondering, you know, why are you letting your health get so low at the moment? Why aren't you death striking? Because generally within the start of the duel, you can death strike. I do use transfusion generally off the opener to survive a little bit, and that kind of helps me kind of reach, you know, the area where I need to burst on a target, because if you don't, you're going to take a lot of pressure. By the time you do burst, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to survive instead of actually dealing pressure. So I'm just going to kind of let my health kind of go down at this point. We're just, you know, normally dueling somebody, nothing big happening, and let's say they start nuking on me and my health is getting extremely low. Now this is where kind of I'd say the skill level of the class has definitely been raised, because this is when I throw up the Hypothermic Lichborn macro and heal the ever-living crud out of ourselves. Now, we are bursting, obviously. We are throwing up Empower. So we throw up Empower and we're bursting, generating a ton of runic power, and also healing ourselves back to full using the Hypothermic Lichborn macro. That was literally a full heal, guys. And you're probably wondering, why would you throw in Empowered Rune Weapon with that off that burst? Well, simply because Empowered Rune Weapon not only is going to give you runes or runic power, but it's also going to give you the haste. Now, the haste is actually extremely important for generating, let's say, your 5th or your 6th death coil heal based on how much burst pressure you're taking. So you can actually heal for a much larger portion than just your health pool based on your incoming damage. And that's kind of like a big, massive self-survivability key that the majority of Frost DKs we see dueling are missing out on in terms of staying alive, because they'll go out, they'll rely on their death strike heals, they'll burst on a target, they'll hit them hard, completely rely on the death strike heals, and then they run away after the burst or something, and they start spamming Lichborn without having on-use cooldown up. And their little death strike, or not death strike, their little death coil heals, they're only healing for like 1.9 to 2k, and they're like, what's going on? I'm not healing for that much. But what you guys just saw is I used about 4 death coils, and I went from about 5k back up to 25k health, 20,000. Now if I'm only healing for 2k, that's going to be about an 8k heal. How did I get to 20,000? So the ability, I gotta find it real quick. The ability Death Coil not only deals damage based off of like shadow damage, obviously it does. Now the one thing you remember, you see there it also says damage to enemy or healing, and it just scaled heavily. Now why did it scale? Based off of trinkets and cooldowns. Now I'm going to just DPS this dummy right here, and you can see there's not much going on with this. It's staying exactly the same. It's because nothing is proc. Now I'm going to go ahead and use Pillar with this ability, and it now heals for 3,400. Now it dropped down to 3,100 because something fell off, but you can see it scales heavily on burst. It also scales heavily with haste based on how many death coils you can proc on yourself and continue the rotation and still heal yourself and weave death coils in and out while Lichborn is up. Now you do want to generally do that sometimes near your burst, otherwise it will feel like you are missing the majority of your self-healing capabilities. Now I didn't really focus too much on burst there. We'll go ahead and cover the burst. You know, non-discussing Lichborn and what you're going to be doing with that. If you're wondering what kind of Lichborn macro I'm running right now, it's show tooltip Lichborn, cast sequence reset equals 20 Lichborn. Reason for that is you saw in my other duel video that Lichborn would like randomly turn itself off during the duel when you're hitting the macro. That's the reason why I have it on a cast sequence reset equals 20, is so it doesn't actually hit Lichborn. You're not going to be able to actually press it again for 20 seconds after using it the first time. Kind of locks it out of the equation, so you're not going to double tap it. Next up, I have Hypothermic Presence, which isn't on the global cooldown, so you can use Lichborn and Hypothermic Presence at the exact same time. And if you slash cast at, you know, player Hazzed death coil, you can death coil yourself without actually taking your focus off the target, allowing you to get better rotation on the target and put out pressure while you're also self-healing while generating runic power for survivability. Next up, I want to talk about some random talents I didn't really address during the video, because they're more along the lines of just like either consistent survivability or just overall mechanical strength for Frost Death Knights. So let's go ahead and talk about Anti-Magic Zone. Obviously, it's a 20% damage reduction you're going to throw on your you know, if you're doing twos or something, you're going to throw on your partner if they're being bursted hard by, like, magic casters. Now, right now, this 20% doesn't do a lot, but obviously once we're able to use the glyph, it'll make a world of difference in terms of dueling, let's say, casters of any kind or dueling rep paladins. Another unsung hero is obviously Death and Decay, which I'll put a couple clips at the end of this of me and another Frost DK just kind of doing some scrim 2v2s, messing around in arena, having fun, and you'll see just how useful Death and Decay actually is inside of arena situations. Taking stealthies out and just giving us basically the entire match on a platter with a good Death and Decay. So that's definitely something you want to be doing. The other thing we need to talk about is Raised Dead. Now, a lot of people, this little Raised Dead guy right here, you wouldn't think he does a lot of damage, but surprisingly over time he does quite a bit of damage since he does last an entire minute. Now, what he does do is sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really terrible, is he stuns. And he uses claw, and he uses an auto attack. None of that is controllable. He does what he wants. He stuns when he wants. He does not listen to us. He does what he wants. Now, why is that useful? It'll keep things like rogues in combat. It'll melee them while you're being CC'd. And since most of the people don't actually have trinkets on the PTR at the moment, most likely on live a lot of people won't either. He's kind of just an antagonist that keeps things in combat, so they can't really heal him nearly as much, and just kind of keeps up a consistent pressure. It's very useful for like 1v1ing rogues and things like that. But overall, he's definitely like a little unsung hero. Obviously, Death and Decay, a lot of people are like, why do we even have that? And I think people are crazy for saying that, because this is extremely useful. Like, Death and Decay can be a game changer inside of Arena. Just this small thing, even if it just did 1 damage. If it did -3 damage and healed him, but still caused him to tick damage so it got him out of stealth, it would still be an amazing ability. I mean, I can't actually, like, when people say that is not worth having, just drives me insane. Like, Death and Decay is amazing. Like, it gives us so much more mechanical strength for fighting invis classes. Like, even fighting a mage, when a mage randomly invises and you throw Death and Decay down on top of him, it's amazing. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. Like, mechanically, it's a beast talent. Obviously, in PvE, it doesn't really do much for Frost DK, but you know what? I'm actually kind of okay with that, because, like, I don't really want to rely heavily on Death and Decay to deal any kind of pressure on a Frost DK. I would rather it go to something a little bit cooler, like even if it has to be Frost Scythe or it has to be Frozen Pulse or anything along those lines. I would rather see it being my character than something I throw on the ground and I'm like, yay, DPS! Don't hit buttons, DPS. You know, I'm just not a big fan of that. I like to be actively dealing pressure. But yeah, I'd say that fairly sums up Frost DK at the moment. Kiting, guys. I can't talk about that enough. Kiting is going to be needed for playing a Frost DK at the moment and generally doing well at dueling. You're also going to need to know what other cooldowns other people are popping during the duel and when you're going to be popping your stuff. It is going to get very confusing, and it's a fairly nice challenge, and I do actually find it pretty fun. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up these little clips on the screen, and you guys can watch those as the videos end in. So I'll see you next time, guys. Here comes the chat count. Alright. Double marksman. A lot of burst. A lot of scary burst. We're going to go on the top one, if possible. I mean, either one will be good. Every time, dude. Every time. Ooh, he got away. He got away. He popped cooldowns the same time I did. We got up a shield. I'm going to LOS the other hunter. Oh, the other hunter's opening up on my partner. Coming out with cooldowns, throwing up ghoul. Going up against Shadow Priest Rogue. Seems we're gonna go on the Rogue this time around. Hopefully we can both get in combat though. I'm gonna get silenced here. Getting stunned. I'm gonna shrink at that. I'm definitely the target. Holy jeez Lord. What the crap is happening to me? I'm dead. I'm dead. There ain't no living, dude. There ain't no living. I just gotta rely on him. Alright, I'm coming out. I wanted to wait till like after Death Pack, but I think we got this. GG. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Arcane Mage, we got sub rogues. Bum Rush Mage. Alright, we're going in hard on Mage. We're gonna jack him up. We're gonna jack him up! Oh ho 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 ho! Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. It's really bad. It's really bad. Okay. Okay, this is a little better. It's a little better. We got ice block. We got ice block. They're stunned. Switching back. Ah, I don't want to burst so soon. Ah. Okay, I'm just in. I'm just inside. I don't got any more heals at this point. He doesn't got ice block, so I may go down. I may go down. I can't heal. I got stunned. I got stunned. I got stunned for Rogue. All right, we put him down. Oh, that was close. Oh, that was scary. Going up against Rogue Boomy. This is gonna be interesting. Hopefully, we're gonna nuke on the Boomy. Not letting him get away. Ain't happening, dude. He's gonna take a lot of pressure. I don't see his partner yet. I think we're gonna knock him down even before his partner comes out here. His partner's done for.